Sarah Mitchell's hands trembled slightly as she smoothed down her navy blue skirt suit. The gleaming elevator of Rhodes Technologies carried her up to the 50th floor, where CEO Alexander Rhodes would interview her. The morning sun sparkled through the glass walls, lighting up the Manhattan skyline, but Sarah barely noticed the view. Her mind raced with rehearsed answers and the weight of secrets she carried. The elevator doors opened to reveal a stunning reception area with marble floors and modern art on the walls. An elegant receptionist looked up and smiled. "Miss Mitchell, Mr. Rhodes is ready for you." Sarah followed her through glass doors into a large corner office. The man who stood up from behind the massive desk wasn't what she expected. Alexander Rhodes was younger than the business magazine suggested, probably in his mid-30s, and his warm brown eyes held none of the coldness she'd anticipated from a billionaire CEO. "Ms. Mitchell, welcome." His voice was deep and pleasant as he extended his hand. "Please have a seat." Sarah shook his hand firmly, fighting to keep her expression professional despite the unexpected spark of electricity she felt at his touch. She sat down in one of the leather chairs facing his desk, grateful that her legs didn't betray her nervousness. "Your resume is quite impressive," Alex said, looking down at the paper in front of him, "though I noticed some gaps in your employment history." Sarah's heart skipped a beat, but she kept her voice steady. "I took some time off to care for a sick family member and do freelance work." The lie felt bitter on her tongue, but it was better than the truth. Alex studied her for a moment, and Sarah fought the urge to look away. "Tell me about your vision for Rhodes Technologies' marketing strategy," he said finally. This was familiar ground. Sarah launched into her carefully prepared presentation, pulling out her tablet to show mock-ups she'd created. "Your current marketing focuses on the technical aspects of your products, which is important for B2B sales. But you're missing an opportunity to connect with everyday consumers." As she spoke, she noticed Alex leaning forward, his expression growing more interested. She showed him concept art for a campaign that would highlight how Rhodes Technologies' innovations improved daily life. "The average person doesn't care about processing power or technical specifications," she explained. "They care about how technology makes their lives better, easier, more connected. We need to tell that story." "Interesting perspective," a new voice said. Sarah turned to see a man entering the office. Marcus Chen, the company's COO, according to her research. His expression was more guarded than Alex's as he took a seat. "Marcus, perfect timing," Alex said. "Ms. Mitchell was just sharing some fascinating ideas for rebranding our consumer division." Sarah continued her presentation, answering their questions with growing confidence. She could tell she was making an impression, especially on Alex, who kept nodding and building on her ideas with his own suggestions. After 45 minutes, Marcus checked his watch. "We have that board meeting, Alex." "Of course." Alex stood up. "Ms. Mitchell, thank you for coming in. We'll be in touch." As Sarah gathered her things, she could hear Marcus speaking quietly to Alex. "Her ideas are good, but those employment gaps concern me. We should do a deeper background check." Sarah's hands stilled for a fraction of a second, but she maintained her composure as she walked to the door. To her surprise, Alex followed her. "I apologize for Marcus," he said softly. "He's protective of the company, but I want you to know that I'm very impressed with your ideas." Sarah looked up at him, suddenly aware of how close they were standing. His cologne was subtle but pleasant, and this close she could see flecks of gold in his brown eyes. "Thank you, Mr. Rhodes." "Alex, please." He smiled, and Sarah felt her heart flutter traitorously. "How soon can you start?" Sarah blinked in surprise. "You mean, the job is yours if you want it. Your vision for the company aligns perfectly with where I want to take Rhodes Technologies." Sarah knew she should say no. Getting involved with such a high-profile company would make her more visible, more easily found. But looking at Alex's genuine enthusiasm, she couldn't bring herself to walk away. "I can start Monday," she heard herself say. "Excellent." His smile widened. "Welcome to Rhodes Technologies, Ms. Mitchell." As Sarah rode the elevator back down, her reflection in the mirrored walls showed a woman who looked confident and professional. No one would guess that everything about her, from her name to her carefully crafted background, was a carefully constructed lie, or that taking this job might be the biggest mistake of her new life. but something about Alex Rhodes made her want to take the risk. 2 months into her new role at Rhodes Technologies, Sarah Mitchell had already made waves. Her office on the 48th floor buzzed with activity as her team prepared for their biggest presentation yet. She stood at her whiteboard, adding final notes to their campaign strategy when a familiar cologne caught her attention. Working late again? Alex Rhodes stood in her doorway, his suit jacket casually thrown over his shoulder. The setting sun through the windows cast a golden glow around him. Sarah's heart did its usual flutter, but she kept her voice professional. Just finalizing tomorrow's presentation. The Asian market launch is crucial. I've seen the preliminary numbers from your last campaign, Alex said, stepping into her office. Sales are up 40% in the consumer division. The board is impressed. Not everyone was impressed, though. Earlier that day, Sarah had overheard Jessica Porter, the previous marketing director, complaining to colleagues. She comes out of nowhere with a mysterious background, and suddenly she's Rhodes' golden girl? Alex must have noticed her expression shift. Everything okay? Just nervous about tomorrow, Sarah lied, erasing a section of her whiteboard to avoid his gaze. That's not the Sarah Mitchell I know, Alex said, moving. The Tokyo launch event transformed the grand ballroom of the Four Seasons into a perfect blend of traditional Japanese elegance and modern technology. Sarah stood near the entrance, greeting international executives in a floor-length black gown. Her marketing campaign had exceeded all expectations. Rhodes Technologies' new products were already breaking sales records in Asia. But Sarah barely heard the praise being showered on her. Her eyes kept drifting to Alex, who looked devastating in his tuxedo as he moved through the crowd. Since the threatening email a week ago, she'd done her best to avoid being alone with him, but it was getting harder to ignore the pull between them. You got in yourself, Marcus said, appearing beside her with 2 champagne glasses. He handed her one. I have to admit, I was wrong about you. Sarah took a careful sip. Thank you, Marcus. That means a lot. Alex was right to trust his instincts when he hired you. Marcus studied her over his glass. Though I'm still curious about those employment gaps. Before Sarah could respond, the music changed to a slow waltz. Alex appeared before them, extending his hand to Sarah. May I have this dance? Sarah knew she should say no, but with the champagne warming her blood and success making her bold, she took his hand. Alex led her onto the dance floor, pulling her close enough that she could feel the warmth of his body. You've been avoiding me, he said softly, his hand warm against her back. I've been busy with the launch, Sarah replied, trying to ignore how perfectly they moved together. Is that the only reason? His brown eyes searched hers. Sarah, I feel something between us. And I know you feel it too. The music swelled around them as they turned. It's not that simple, Sarah whispered. It could be. Alex's hand tightened slightly on her waist. Stop running from me. The dance ended, but Alex kept hold of her hand. Come with me, he said, please. Sarah let him lead her away from the ballroom, down a quiet hallway to a small terrace overlooking the city lights. The night air was cool against her bare shoulders. Why do you keep pushing me away? Alex asked, turning to face her. Every time we get close, you pull back. What are you afraid of? Sarah looked up at him, at the face that had begun haunting her dreams. You don't know anything about me. I know you're brilliant. Alex stepped closer. I know you work harder than anyone I've ever met. I know your smile lights up a room, but sometimes when you think no one's watching, you look haunted. Sarah's breath caught as he raised a hand to cup her cheek. Alex, please. Tell me to stop, he whispered, leaning down. Tell me you don't want this. Instead of speaking, Sarah closed the distance between them. Their lips met softly at first, then with growing intensity. Alex's arms wrapped around her, pulling her closer as she wound her fingers into his hair. For one perfect moment, Sarah let herself forget everything but the feel of him, the taste of champagne on his lips, the solid strength of his body against hers. Then her phone buzzed in her clutch. Reality crashed back in. Sarah broke away, breathing hard. I'm sorry, she gasped. I can't. We can't. Sarah, wait. Alex reached for her, but she was already moving past him, back toward the ballroom. In the ladies' room, Sarah checked her phone with trembling hands. Another anonymous email. Getting cozy with the boss. Wonder what he'd think if he knew about the bodies you put in the ground with your testimony. Tick-tock, Jennifer. Sarah stared at her reflection in the mirror. Her lipstick was smudged, her cheeks flushed. She looked like a woman falling in love, not someone whose past was about to destroy everything she built. Back in the ballroom, she could feel Alex's eyes on her as she made her excuses and left early. The taste of him still lingered on her lips, making her decision both harder and clearer. Tomorrow, she would start looking for a way out. But tonight, alone in her apartment, she would allow herself to remember that kiss and mourn for everything she couldn't have. Despite Sarah's best intentions to keep her distance after the gala, fate had other plans. A week later, she found herself working late with Alex on a crucial presentation. The Rhodes Technologies office was quiet, with only security guards and cleaning staff remaining on the floors below. "We should take a break," Alex said, loosening his tie. They had been reviewing documents for hours in his office. "Have you eaten?" Sarah knew she should leave, but her growling stomach betrayed her. Alex smiled and pulled out his phone. "I'm ordering Chinese. Any preferences?" 30 minutes later, they sat on the leather couch in his office, sharing containers of food. The city lights twinkled through the floor-to-ceiling windows, creating an intimate atmosphere. "Tell me about your parents," Sarah said, trying to keep the conversation on safer ground than their kiss at the gala. Alex's expression softened. "They died in a car accident when I was 19. Dad had just started Rhodes Technologies in our garage. It was barely more than a dream then." "I'm so sorry." Sarah's hand found his instinctively. "I dropped out of college to keep the company going," Alex continued, his thumb absently stroking her palm. "Everyone said I was crazy, that I should sell, but this company was their legacy. I couldn't let it die." Sarah watched his face in the dim light, seeing not the powerful CEO, but the 19-year-old boy who had lost everything and rebuilt from scratch. "You've made them proud." Alex turned to her, his eyes intense. "What about your family?" Sarah tensed, but forced herself to share a small piece of truth. "I grew up in foster care. Different homes, different schools. I learned to adapt quickly. That must have been lonely." "It was." Sarah looked down at their joined hands. "But it taught me to be strong." "You don't always have to be strong," Alex said softly. He reached up to tuck a strand of hair behind her ear. "Not with me." The tenderness in his touch undid her. When he kissed her this time, Sarah didn't run. She let herself melt into him, let his arms wrap around her as the kiss deepened. Everything else fell away, her fears, her past, the threatening emails. There was only Alex, his warmth, his gentle hands in her hair. Later that week, they had their first real date. Alex cooked dinner at his penthouse, proving surprisingly skilled in the kitchen. As they ate on his balcony under the stars, Sarah found herself sharing more small truths, her favorite books, her dream of traveling the world, funny stories about her first job in marketing. But media attention was growing. Business journals speculated about the relationship between Rhodes Technologies CEO and his mysterious marketing director. Sarah's anxiety grew with each article, each photographer trying to snap their picture. One evening, cuddled on Alex's couch watching old movies, Sarah's phone buzzed. Another anonymous email showed a grainy photo of them at dinner, followed by newspaper clippings about the old court case. Her hands shook. "Everything okay?" Alex asked, noticing her distress. "Just work," she lied, deleting the email. She curled closer to him, trying to memorize everything, his heartbeat under her ear, the way his fingers played with her hair, his clean scent mixed with expensive cologne. "I'm falling for you," Alex whispered into the darkness. "I know it's fast, but I've never felt this way about anyone." Sarah's heart soared and broke simultaneously. She sat up to look at him, memorizing his face. "Alex." "You don't have to say anything," he said quickly. "I just wanted you to know." Sarah kissed him, pouring everything she couldn't say into it. "I'm falling for you too. I'm sorry. I wish things were different." That night, she dreamed of a life where she could tell him everything, about witness protection, about the trial, about why she had to disappear. In her dream, he understood. He protected her. They found a way. But when she woke in his arms at dawn, reality waited like a shadow. The truth would either make him hate her or put him in danger. Sarah wasn't sure which would be worse. Marcus Chen sat in his office, reviewing the private investigator's preliminary report on Sarah Mitchell. The manila folder was thin, containing just a few pages, far too few for someone with her supposed background. Are you sure about this? Marcus asked the investigator, James Wilson, who sat across from him. Positive. Wilson leaned forward. Sarah Mitchell only exists on paper for the past 5 years. Before that, nothing. No college records, no previous employment, no social media. It's like she appeared out of thin air. Marcus rubbed his temples. The morning papers showed another photo of Alex and Sarah at a charity gala, looking very much in love. The headlines speculated about wedding bells. There's more, Wilson said, pulling out another document. I found an old photo that facial recognition matched to her. Different name, different hair color, but it's definitely her. She was involved in some big federal case about 5 years ago. Most records are sealed, but... A knock interrupted them. Alex stood in the doorway, frowning. Marcus? We had a meeting scheduled. Alex. Marcus quickly gathered the papers. Come in, we need to talk. Meanwhile, Sarah sat in her office, staring at her phone. 3 missed calls from an unknown number. The voicemail icon blinked accusingly. With trembling fingers, she pressed play. Hello, Jennifer. The gravelly voice from her nightmares came through the speaker. Remember me? I'm getting out next month, sweetheart. We should catch up about that testimony of yours. Sarah deleted the message, her heart pounding. She looked through her glass office walls to where Alex was walking with Marcus toward the COO's office. The sight of him usually brought comfort, but now it filled her with dread. In Marcus's office, Alex stood rigid as he looked at the investigation files. You had her investigated. Without telling me? It's my job to protect this company, Marcus said firmly. And you? She's lying about who she is, Alex. There has to be an explanation. But doubt crept into Alex's voice as he looked at the evidence. The timing is suspicious, Marcus pressed. We're about to announce the government defense contract next week. What if she's corporate espionage? Or worse? Alex sank into a chair, studying a photo of a younger Sarah, or Jennifer, according to the paperwork, with different colored hair. I need to hear her side. We should call security. No, Alex's tone was final. I'll talk to her myself. Back in her office, Sarah's computer chimed with an email notification. Her blood ran cold as she read it. Deal time, Jennifer. $5 million transferred to this account, or I tell your boyfriend everything before I pay him a visit. Daddy raised you better than to be a snitch. Attached was a photo of Alex leaving his apartment that morning. Sarah's hands shook as she deleted the email. She had to leave. Now. She'd done it before, disappeared without a trace. But this time, the thought of leaving Alex made her physically ill. She began gathering her things, mind racing through her emergency plans. New identity papers hidden in a storage unit. Cash stashed in various locations. A go-bag in her apartment. Her office door opened. Alex stood there, holding a file. His face was unreadable. We need to talk, he said quietly. Sarah knew that look. She'd seen it in courtrooms, in police stations, in every face that learned who she really was. Alex, I can explain. Can you? He closed the door. Because I just learned that Sarah Mitchell doesn't exist. So who exactly are you? Before she could answer, her phone buzzed again. The same unknown number. Alex's eyes went to it. You should answer that, he said coldly. Since apparently everything else about you is a lie, I'd love to know who's really calling. Sarah stared at the buzzing phone, tears threatening. 5 years of running. 5 years of lying. And now, as she looked at the hurt in Alex's eyes, she realized that protecting him might mean breaking both their hearts. Sarah's phone stopped buzzing, the silence in her office now deafening. Alex stood by the door, his face a mask of hurt and anger as he waited for her explanation. Outside, the sun was setting over Manhattan, casting long shadows across the room. My real name is Jennifer Cooper, she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. And that call was probably from someone who wants me dead. Alex's expression flickered. He moved to close the blinds of her glass office walls, then sat in the chair across from her desk. Tell me everything. No more lies. Sarah, Jennifer, took a shaky breath. 5 years ago, I was an accountant at Martinez Shipping. I discovered they were a front for the Castillo crime family. They were using the company to smuggle drugs, weapons, everything. The Castillos? Alex's face paled. Everyone knew that name, one of the most dangerous crime families on the East Coast. I found proof. Records, shipping manifests, money transfers. Her hands twisted together in her lap. I could have looked the other way. Maybe I should have. But they were hurting people. Kids were dying from their drugs. I had to do something. You went to the police. The FBI. I wore a wire for months, gathering evidence. My testimony put away Victor Castillo, the family patriarch, and his top lieutenants. She smiled bitterly. They called me their golden witness. The case wouldn't have stuck without me. Alex leaned forward. And now? Victor's up for parole next month. His son Anthony has been running things from the outside, and She swallowed hard. He never forgave me for betraying the family. The FBI put me in witness protection, gave me a new identity. I'd moved 3 times when they got close. The emails and calls you've been getting, Alex said slowly. They found you again. Sarah nodded, pulling up the latest threatening email on her computer and turning the screen toward him. Alex read it, his jaw tightening at the threat against him. Why marketing? He asked suddenly. Why Rhodes Technologies? Marketing lets me be creative, reinvent things. It felt fitting. She met his eyes. I never meant to fall for you. I never meant for any of this to happen. Alex stood abruptly, pacing the office. Do you know what this could do to the company? We're about to announce a major government contract. If the media finds out our marketing director is in witness protection. I know. Sarah's voice broke. I'll resign. Today, I'll disappear. No. Alex's voice was sharp. He stopped pacing, turning to face her. You're not running anymore. Before she could respond, her office door opened. Marcus burst in, his face grave. Alex, we have a problem. Someone leaked Sarah's, or Jennifer's, identity to the press. It's already hitting the news sites. Sarah's computer chimed with another email. This one had a video attachment, security footage of her entering her apartment building. The message was simple, time's up. They're going to kill me, she whispered. And now they'll hurt you too. I never should have stayed, never should have let myself love. She cut herself off, but Alex's eyes snapped to her face. Despite everything, despite the lies and danger, she saw something soften in his expression. Marcus cleared his throat. I have security teams ready. We need to move both of you to a safe location until... No, Sarah stood up. I won't put anyone else in danger. I need to leave. Now. Sarah, Alex started. That's not even my real name, she cried. Everything you know about me is a lie. The woman you think you love doesn't exist. Alex crossed the room in 2 strides, taking her face in his hands. I know exactly who you are. You're the woman who sacrificed everything to do the right thing, who works harder than anyone I've ever met, who makes me laugh, who challenges me, who sees me as more than just a CEO. Tears spilled down her cheeks. Alex, please, I can't watch them hurt you. His thumbs brushed away her tears. Then we'll fight them together. The next 48 hours passed in a blur of chaos. News vans camped outside Rhodes Technologies, reporters shouting questions about the company's connection to organized crime. The stock price plummeted. Social media exploded with theories and accusations. Sarah watched it all unfold from a secure floor of the Rhodes Technologies building, where Alex had insisted she stay. Security teams patrolled every entrance. Marcus worked around the clock managing the PR crisis. The board is demanding an emergency meeting, Marcus said, entering the conference room where Sarah and Alex were reviewing security footage. They're talking about forcing you to step down, Alex. Alex's jaw tightened. Let them try. Our stock has dropped 30%, Marcus continued. The government contract is on hold pending investigation. We could lose everything. Sarah stood up, her chair scraping against the floor. This is exactly why I need to leave. I'm destroying everything you've built. You're not going anywhere, Alex said firmly, but Sarah saw the strain around his eyes. He hadn't slept in days, dealing with shareholders, reporters, and security concerns. Her phone buzzed. Another blocked number. She received dozens of threatening calls, each worse than the last. The FBI had been notified, but they warned her that Anthony Castillo was careful. They'd never been able to pin anything directly on him. "Miss Cooper," a federal marshal entered the room. "We need to discuss your options. Given the public exposure, we're recommending immediate relocation. New identity, new state, complete disconnect from your current life." "No," Alex said immediately. "Mr. Rhodes," the marshal said patiently, "I understand your concerns, but—" "You don't understand anything," Alex snapped. "You want to send her running again. For how long? Another 5 years? 10? While these criminals walk free?" Sarah touched his arm gently. "Alex, he's right. I can't stay. Look what I've done to your company, your reputation." "Stop." Alex turned to her, his voice softening. "None of that matters." "It should." Sarah pulled away from him. "This company is your parents' legacy. You've spent your whole life building it. I won't be the reason it falls apart." Before Alex could respond, Marcus burst back in. "Turn on the news. Now." The wall-mounted TV flickered to life, showing a press conference. Victor Castillo's lawyer stood at a podium, speaking smoothly. "My client has been a model prisoner. These new allegations are clearly an attempt to influence his upcoming parole hearing. As for Ms. Cooper's accusations, consider the source, a woman who has admitted to living under false identities, who infiltrated a prominent company under false pretenses." Sarah felt sick. They were trying to discredit her original testimony, using her relationship with Alex to paint her as untrustworthy. Her phone buzzed again. This time, it was a video message. Sarah's hand shook as she pressed play. Anthony Castillo's face filled the screen. He looked exactly as she remembered. Handsome, well-dressed, and utterly cold. "Hello, Jennifer, or Sarah, or whatever you're calling yourself these days. Daddy's lawyer is very good, isn't he? Soon he'll be free, and then—" he smiled. "Well, you remember what happens to people who betray the family." The video ended. Sarah looked up to find Alex watching her, his face tight with worry. "I'm leaving tonight," she said quietly. "The marshal's right. It's the only way." "There has to be another solution," Alex insisted. "There isn't." Sarah's voice broke. "They'll kill you to get to me. Everyone I care about gets hurt. I won't let that happen again. So you'll just disappear." Alex's voice was raw. "Become someone else? Start over alone?" "It's what I do." Sarah tried to smile, but tears spilled down her cheeks. "It's what I've always done." Alex stepped toward her, but she backed away. "Please," she whispered. "Don't make this harder. Just let me go." The pain in his eyes nearly broke her, but Sarah knew if she let him touch her, hold her, she'd never find the strength to leave. And staying would sign his death warrant. That night, while Alex was in an emergency board meeting, Sarah slipped out of Rhodes Technologies for the last time. She left behind only a note. "Loving you was the most real thing I've ever done. I'm sorry it wasn't enough. Stay safe. Forget me." 3 weeks after Sarah's disappearance, Alex sat in his office, staring at the city lights. The media storm had barely died down. His company was struggling, but surviving. None of it mattered without her. "Alex." Marcus entered without knocking. "You need to see this." He placed a laptop on Alex's desk, playing a video. It showed Anthony Castillo entering a warehouse, speaking with known criminals. The audio was crystal clear. "Where did you get this?" Alex asked sharply. "Remember that cybersecurity firm we contracted last year?" Marcus smiled grimly. "Turns out they're very good at what they do. We've been monitoring all of Anthony's communications since Sarah left. Is this enough to arrest him?" "Better." Marcus handed him another file. "We found his entire operation. Money laundering, witness intimidation, murder contracts, everything. The FBI is moving tonight, and—" he paused. "Victor's parole was denied. Anonymous source provided new evidence of him running operations from prison." Alex stood up, hope flaring for the first time in weeks. "Can you find her?" "Already did." Marcus handed him a piece of paper. "Small town in Oregon. She's working at a local marketing firm under the name Rachel Green." Alex grabbed his coat. "Have my jet ready in an hour." "Already done." Marcus grinned. "Cars waiting downstairs." The flight to Oregon felt endless. Alex rehearsed what he'd say, how he'd convince her it was safe to come back. But when he arrived at the address Marcus had given him, the small house was dark. A neighbor walking her dog stopped to watch him. Looking for Rachel? She left yesterday. Said something about moving east. Alex's heart sank. He was too late. She was running again. Then he saw it. A small coffee shop across the street called Manhattan Memories. His pulse quickened as he crossed the road. The bell chimed as he entered. And there she was, sitting in a corner booth, her hair now red but her eyes exactly as he remembered. She looked up, unsurprised. "I saw the news about Anthony's arrest," she said softly, "and Victor's parole." Alex slid into the booth across from her. "You knew I'd find you." "I hoped you would." She twisted her coffee cup nervously. "I saw what you did, using your company's resources to gather evidence, working with the FBI. You risked everything." "Not everything." Alex reached across the table, taking her hand. "You're everything." Tears filled her eyes. "The company is fine. Stocks are recovering. The government contract came through. Turns out taking down a major crime family is good for business." He squeezed her hand. "But none of that matters without you. I can't go back to being Sarah Mitchell." "So don't." Alex pulled out a small box, sliding it across the table. "Be Jennifer Rhodes instead." Her breath caught as she opened it, revealing a diamond ring. "Alex." "I love you," he said simply. "Every version of you. The brilliant marketing director. The brave woman who testified against criminals. The fighter who keeps getting back up. I don't care what name you use, as long as you're with me." "They could still come after us," she whispered. "Let them try. Anthony's entire network is being dismantled. Victor's never getting out of prison, and," he smiled, "I've hired the best security team in the country. We'll face whatever comes together." Jennifer, because that was who she really was, looked at the ring, then at the man she loved. For the first time in 5 years, she felt something unfamiliar. Hope. "Yes," she said. Alex's face lit up. "Yes. Yes to the ring. Yes to coming home. Yes to everything." She smiled through her tears. "But I have one condition." "Anything." "I want to start a foundation, helping other witnesses rebuild their lives. No one should have to run forever." Alex came around to her side of the booth, pulling her into his arms. "We'll build it together." As they kissed, the morning sun streamed through the coffee shop windows. Jennifer felt the weight of her past finally lifting. She had spent so long running from who she was, she had almost missed the chance to become who she could be. But now, in Alex's arms, she was finally home, and this time she was staying.